The latest version of the TCEQ Multi-Sector General Permit became effective on August 14th, 2021, and everyone has until November 12th, 2021 to renew their permit. In this presentation, we'll review the application process and resources to help with applying for the permit, and we'll also review some of the changes from the last permit. And then we'll kind of do a general review of MSGP requirements. Again, just a kind of a note about who we are. I'm Teresa Cooper with the City of Fort Worth Environmental Quality, part of Code Compliance Department. Everybody on the team is in the same group. We do a lot of work besides the industrial inspections, and you can see on that little circle diagram all the different types of functions that we do. The city also has a permit from the TCEQ, and most of that work listed in the diagram is required by our permit, including performing inspections at industrial facilities. Additionally, the city has a stormwater ordinance that prohibits illicit discharges to the municipal separate storm sewer system, also known as the MS4. We will be looking at the industrial inspections as part of this presentation. There are different types of authorizations that the TCEQ can issue. They can issue an individual stormwater permit in some situations, but most facilities opt for the MSGP. Some facilities qualify for automatic authorization, but very specific conditions have to be met to do that. The no exposure certification is a possibility for some facilities that do not expose industrial operations to precipitation. And this is just kind of a summary, and of course you can't read all of this now, but this is the no exposure guidance document, basically, or part of it. No exposure means that all industrial activities are either conducted indoors or protected by a storm-resistant shelter to prevent exposure of those activities to rain, snow, or runoff. The questions listed are from the TCEQ guidance document on conditional no exposure and will assist industry in determining if they qualify for the no exposure exclusion as an alternative option for the MSGP. So you can go through those, and that guidance document is available on one of the links to a website that I'll give you at the end of the presentation. What's new in the MSGP? Here are some of the highlights of what has changed in the renewed MSGP. It definitely does not include all of the changes, so you'll need to see the permit to make sure that you're familiar with what all the changes are. There's also a fact sheet on the TCEQ website that summarizes the changes to the renewed MSGP. Some of the highlights: the North American Industrial Classification System, or NAICS codes, have been added to the SIC code table in the permit to assist with determining applicability. The delegation of signatory authority forms must be submitted to the TCEQ electronically through the State of Texas Environmental Electronic Reporting System, also known as STEERS. Pre-production plastic best management practices have been added to the permit. They have clarified requirements and reporting for the two types of numeric effluent limitations: hazardous metals and federal effluent limitation guidelines. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. They've lowered the benchmark monitoring values for Sector T and Sector U, which are treatment works or food products. And they've added or clarified conditions for Sector J, which has to do with mining, Sector L, landfills, and Sector Y, rubber. And you need to see the sector-specific information in the permit for those changes. And everybody should look at the permit because it is renewed. There are some changes, and everybody should also look at their sector-specific requirements at the back of the permit. Who needs a permit and can apply under the MSGP. Industries that discharge stormwater to surface waters of the state directly or through an MS4 can be authorized under the MSGP. A permit is needed if the SIC code that describes the facility is listed in the permit, if the facility conducts an industrial activity listed in the permit, if discharges from the facility are subject to federal categorical effluent limitations, or if the facility has been designated by the TCQ executive director as requiring a permit. And if you have co-located facilities, any special circumstances like that, it's described in the permit how to handle that. And if you need to look at both requirements for both SIC codes and so on. So you want to look at the permit for sure. How to apply for the MSGP, and we're going to do more on this at the end, but I just wanted to put the information and the links there so we can talk about them a little bit at the beginning here. So there is the STEERS website is how you will apply for the permit. The TCQ wants everybody to apply electronically if possible. There are waivers if for some reason you cannot apply electronically, but you'll need to contact the TCEQ to arrange for that. There is a fantastic website, the assistance tools. It's part of the Small Business Assistance group. It has all sorts of links that you can use, but specifically for the renewal of the MSGP, they have come out with 2 links, and they're at the top of that page, and they'll say like little hot, like they're new. And one of them is a customer help form that you can use if you get stuck, like if you're trying to renew your permit and something's not working, or you're not sure which type of permit or authorization you should get. You can just fill out the form online and submit your questions. There is also a link there to how to submit a renewal notice of intent in STEERS, and it's a video, and it's very detailed, and we're going to watch a little bit of it at the end, but it's a great resource that they've provided that just takes you step by step through renewing your application. Other links there and information on how to help. There's actually also a guidance document on creating an account in STEERS for e-permitting if you don't have an account yet. The STEERS helpline is there, as well as some information on the TCQ Small Business Assistance contacts in this area. So just to kind of go through some highlights of the stormwater pollution prevention plan that should be in place before you even submit your NOI. So this is a time now where if you're new, you're creating a SWIP, or if you're renewing your permit, you're pulling out your SWIP and making sure it's all looking good, so that when you submit your application for the new permit or renewing your permit, you can check that box and say, yes, I have a good SWIP in place. So some of the highlights of the SWIP, you really need to see the permit for more detailed information. Of course, this is just a brief overview. The stormwater pollution prevention team section of the SWIP or the stormwater plan should list the members of the team assigned and their responsibilities in maintaining permit compliance. The description of potential pollutant sources in the SWIP should describe activities and materials that have the potential to be sources of pollutants. And the inventory of exposed materials should include materials handled, stored, processed, or disposed that might be exposed to precipitation or runoff. A narrative description should be included that describes potential pollutants from exposed areas, such as loading and unloading, outdoor storage and processing, waste disposal, vehicle and equipment maintenance, cleaning and fueling, and other potential sources. Locations where leaks and spills have or potentially could occur should also be included. A general location map should be included that identifies the location of the facility and potential receiving water bodies. The site map is unique to each facility. It should include the location of outfalls and sampling points, the direction of stormwater flow, the location of stormwater conveyances as well. Structures, lots, and structural control devices, wastewater treatment units, air treatment units, vehicle equipment and maintenance areas, and material storage, loading and unloading, and spill locations should also be shown. So the site map needs a lot of information on it, and you can go to the permit and look at it. It will spell out what you need in there. There are also stormwater pollution prevention plan worksheets found on that assistance tools webpage that I showed you earlier. They will have actual worksheets that can walk you through how to a template for your SWP, basically. Also, on the SWP, don't forget about your employee training. You need to kind of lay out in your SWP what you're teaching the employees as far as SWP awareness and education, and making sure that especially the people on the team are trained annually, and that education and training needs to be documented in your stormwater plan. The SWP should also contain a list of reportable spills and leaks in areas exposed to stormwater and additional spills and leaks that could contribute pollutants to stormwater discharges. Best management practices. Those are methods to reduce the discharge of pollutants in stormwater and minimize exposure of areas with industrial activity. Examples include structural controls like curbs and berms, containment structures, spill control methods and cleaning, and waste disposal methods that reduce exposure to stormwater. Good housekeeping practices that prevent pollutants from entering the stormwater runoff should be noted in the SWP. These can be everyday activities like cleaning areas around dumpsters or in loading and unloading areas. Facilities that handle pre-production plastic must include in the SWP the measures used to prevent exposure of plastics to precipitation or runoff. Facilities that handle pre-production plastic must implement control measures such as cleaning up spills, sweeping, and pellet capturing. The SWP should also note the maintenance program for any stormwater structural controls at the site, including inspections and maintenance frequencies. Measures to reduce soil erosion should also be included if applicable. The spill prevention and response section of the SWP should include identification of areas where spills could occur, procedures to minimize or prevent contamination of stormwater from spills, requirements to label drums and containers, spill cleanup procedures, cleanup materials, inventory, and spill notification procedures. An employee training program should be described in the SWP. Training should be provided to employees responsible for SWP activities at least once a year. Spill prevention and material management, housekeeping, BMPs, and the goals of the SWP should be reviewed. Employees not responsible for implementing the SWP of the goals or the goals of the SWP and how to contact should know how to contact members of the pollution prevention team if something were to occur. So the permit also requires periodic and annual inspections. And though that slide there, those are just some examples from the worksheets. I know you can't really see the detail, but that just shows the template form that the stormwater pollution prevention plan worksheets available on the TCQ website offer if you want some templates to go by. A non-stormwater discharge evaluation is required within 180 days of filing a notice of intent or renewal. The facility must be screened for dry weather flows, and non-stormwater discharges not allowed by the permit must be eliminated. A record of the non-stormwater discharge evaluation must include findings and actions taken as a result of the evaluation and must be signed with the certification statement required by the permit. Periodic inspections should be performed to determine the effectiveness of the BMPs and SWP measures. They are required quarterly unless sector-specific requirements are more frequent, and they should include at least one member of the stormwater pollution prevention team. The inspection report should be signed and should be document the inspector's name, the date and time, the weather at the time of the inspection, any discharges from the site, control measures that need maintenance, non-compliance issues with the SWP or permit, and SWP modifications that are recommended as a result. The annual comprehensive compliance inspection evaluates the overall effectiveness of the SWP. The annual inspection can be combined with a periodic inspection, and the annual inspection should include areas described in the inventory of exposed materials, structural controls, housekeeping areas where spills and leaks have occurred in the last 3 years, areas downstream of outfalls, areas with the potential for stormwater pollution in general. Monitoring and inspections should also be reviewed at this time during this annual inspection. And within 30 days of the annual inspection, the permittee should prepare a report that includes a narrative description of the inspection and the findings. And that report should be signed and certified in accordance with permit requirements. Incidents of noncompliance and proposed revisions to the SWP should be documented. The permit requires multiple types of monitoring. So we're going to kind of review those right now. There's a few different kinds, and not everybody has to do every kind, but there's numeric effluent and hazardous metals monitoring, benchmark, and quarterly visual monitoring. Don't forget to document your rain event monitoring when it rains, and at least once a week, even if it doesn't rain. Especially until you get your monitoring done for that quarter. So for the quarterly visual monitoring, it should be performed at each outfall unless you have substantially similar outfalls, and we'll review that later. You collect the sample in a clear container and you examine it for parameters like color, clarity, sheen, foam, solids, and odors. Document on a form that includes the sample location, date and time samples were collected, name of the person sampling, type of discharge, the results, and if it wasn't collected in the first 30 minutes, explain why. And the pollution prevention team must review the results and modify the SWP if needed as a result of the quarterly visual monitoring. For the hazardous metals monitoring, it's required annually unless you have a waiver. So monitoring results are submitted to the TCEQ when the results exceed the daily maximum effluent limitation in the permit. The results of the numeric effluent limitation monitoring results must be kept on site and recorded on a discharge monitoring report by March 31st following the monitoring period. The discharge monitoring report, or DMR form, can be from net DMR or the EPA or TCEQ form. Exceedances of hazardous metals limitations are a permit violation and must be reported using net DMR unless you have the electronic reporting waiver. Waivers for hazardous metals monitoring can be obtained by metal or by outfall. There are 3 ways to waiver out of this. The first one is the permittee certifies that the facility does not use a raw material or produce a product that contains one or more of the hazardous metals. The second one is that the permittee certifies that the raw materials or products that contain the hazardous metal are never exposed to stormwater runoff. Or the last one, the permittee samples at the first opportunity after receiving the new permit, and the lab results indicate that the metal or metals are not present per detectable levels based on the minimum analytical levels in the permit. This waiver is obtained by certifying one of the conditions exists with the TCEQ. So some sources have additional federal effluent limitations, and they are eligible for coverage under the MSGP in sectors A, C, D, E, J, and O, and you can look those up in the permit and see if they apply. Also S, which is airports. Check the sector requirements in the permit to determine if additional monitoring is required, and results of monitoring must be submitted through NetDMR unless the facility has the waiver for electronic reporting. A copy of the DMR must be maintained at the facility as well. For benchmark monitoring, this is required at some industries based on the facility's SIC code. but not all industries are required to perform benchmark monitoring. So you need to check for your sector and your SIC code in the permit. Sampling is performed twice, once in the first and once in the second half of the calendar year. A waiver is available for the third and fourth monitoring years if the annual average results during the first 2 years did not exceed benchmark levels, but a notice of change must be submitted to request the waiver. Results of benchmark monitoring should be submitted on NetDMR. If there is a benchmark exceedance, the pollution prevention team must investigate the cause and document the investigation in the SWP within 90 days. The team should identify if there are any additional BMPs or SWP revisions that are required based on their investigation. So just monitoring in general, just some things that are discussed in the permit. If 2 or more outfalls show substantially similar effluents, substantially similar outfalls may be identified and monitoring may be conducted at only one of the outfalls for quarterly visual hazardous metals and benchmark monitoring. The SWP must include a justification that the outfalls are substantially similar as described in the permit. And that's only for those types of monitoring that you can do the substantially similar on. All sampling should be representative of stormwater discharge and should be taken within the first 30 minutes of discharge, if at all possible. And it should be 72 hours since the last rain event when you do your sampling. This I just cut and paste from the TCQ website. This was up there as of yesterday, so I just wanted to clarify because the NetDMR system, it says, will begin accepting reports from MSGP permittees in December 2021, and they ask you not to attempt to submit prior to that. This slide just kind of is a rough overview of what we're looking for when we come out and do a stormwater permit inspection. If you hear from one of us that, hey, we're going to come out and do a stormwater inspection, usually we'll give some notice. Sometimes we don't, but it's basically we'll want to see the SWP, all the components of the SWP that we talked about, including your monitoring and inspection and employee training records and all this BMPs and housekeeping that you've noted in your SWP. And we'll also do a walkthrough of the facility, and we'll look for housekeeping and best management practices and you know, making sure that there's nothing that's being discharged that shouldn't be. We may ask you to email us a copy of your SWP and inspection and monitoring records prior to an on-site inspection. If they're electronically available, that's great because we can start looking at that before we even get to the site. So here are some links, and again, we're going to try and post this presentation on our website, so you can, you know, do a print screen or take a picture, or you can come back and look at it later. But these are links just to the multi-sector general permit page. There's that assistance tool link again. It's really great and helpful with all sorts of helpful information on your MSGP and applying. And there's our website, and we also have some links to these pages, as well as a few things like what to expect during an inspection type information on our webpage. There are some helpful phone numbers. You've got your permits at the TCEQ phone lines, and you also have the STEERS helpline, small business assistance. The local number, one of the earlier slides had their headquarters number as well. And that is the number and the email that you can reach us, the City of Fort Worth Code Compliance Environmental Quality. If you want to ask questions after the presentation, you can give us a call, or you can email us at that industrialstormwater@fortworthtexas.gov. Okay, so I am going to show here, hopefully, a little bit of the video I had talked about earlier. This is put out by the TCEQ, and it is a great resource to, if you're applying for your permit, maybe you haven't been on steers since the last time you had to renew 5 years ago. So it's a little tricky to remember all the steps. They have put together one specifically for renewing your MSGP permit. So we'll look at that. I'll stop it a few minutes in. I just want to give you an idea of how specific and detailed it is. And after that, we can start taking questions. I also just real quick wanted to show you this customer help form. Hopefully it will pull up for us. This is the one I was saying that the TCEQ has developed so that if you need help with steers problems or what do I need to do? Do I even need a permit? They have this form and you just kind of check what you need help with, and they are going to try and get back with everybody within 48 hours. So that's a great tool. Let's see if we can get the video going.
Hello. This video presentation will show you how to submit a Notice of Intent, or NOI, renewal application for the Multi-Sector General Permit, known as the MSGP. The NOI renewal application is submitted in TCEQ's online e-permitting system called STEERS. The renewal application is submitted by current permittees with coverage under the 2016 MSGP permit, who need to renew coverage during the 90-day renewal period from August 14th, 2021 to November 12th, 2021. The No Exposure Certification, or NEC renewal application under the MSGP is very similar to the NOI. So this video will be helpful to customers submitting an NEC renewal as well. To get to the STEERS webpage, go to the TCEQ homepage, which can be found at www.tceq.texas.gov. Scroll down to the bottom left of the page. Under the heading Online Services, select e-permitting (STEERS), which in this presentation is highlighted in a red box. Throughout the rest of the presentation, there will be red boxes that highlight the information discussed. After you click on e-permitting STEERS, you'll be taken to the STEERS homepage. Log in to your STEERS account using your ER account number and password. If you have not created a STEERS account, under the STEERS login, it states, I need. Below that, click Create a new account, which is highlighted in red. If you need help creating an account, you can follow the TCEQ YouTube video, How to Set Up an Account in STEERS. Or you can find instructions in Regulatory Guide 531A titled A Guide to Creating an Account in STEERS. If you previously had a STEERS account and it has been archived, email the STEERS help desk at steers@tceq.texas.gov or call the STEERS helpline at 512-239-6925 to have your account reactivated. After you have logged into your STEERS account, you will need to designate Stormwater General Permits as your program area. If you already have Stormwater General Permits designated as your program area, you can skip ahead in the video to when we begin to fill out the application. To set Stormwater General Permits as your program area, on the STEERS homepage in the top center portion of the screen, select My Account. On the next screen, it will show your account summary. Below that is a box labeled STEERS Access. In that box, you will need to select your STEERS program to add or modify. Next to Select Program to add or modify, click the drop-down. After you click the drop-down, all of the program areas that you can select will appear. Select Stormwater General Permits, parentheses, EPR_SW, then select Go. Screen, you will need to select your access type. In the drop-down next to access type, you will see different access types and the functions allowed by each type.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video there. It goes on, it's about a half hour, I think, altogether, and it's very, very useful. What I would recommend is having that video kind of on one screen while maybe you're working on your permit on another, or watching it at least in advance, so you'll have everything you need ready and be familiar with the renewal process. If there's anything else, just let us know, and I appreciate everybody coming and signing on and working with us, and hope the permit process goes well. Thank you so much.